Hey, welcome back to the show, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Arif, Halaby, Jeff Gerard, your place for news, talk, information. This is what our show is all about, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Look, you can always go to hometownstation.com, click on Total Financial Solutions, shoot us an email. We'll be happy to answer it or address that concern on the air. Sometimes we do it privately, so that's okay as well. Our concern in Santa Clarita and the greater Antelope Valley and San Fernando Valley area, if you will, doing now over 2,000 of these radio shows, I remember thinking, gosh, I could probably have enough information maybe for 10 shows. And of course, that was such a long time ago. And the issues have changed, and they have morphed, and they've grown, and they've changed different political administrations, different Congress, different laws in the state of California, rules. But one of the common themes that I have seen in the last, coming up on 20 years in this business, in June it will be 20 years. The common theme that I have seen is that for most people in California, when they retire, one of those options is to leave the state of California. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, how embarrassing if I was a state legislature or the governor of the what do you call it, majority party, right? Because there's basically, in California, there's one party rule. If somebody wants to do something, they just do it. There's no compromise. There's no conversation. There's no, pulling the reins back a little bit in one direction or another. It's a one-party system in the state. So that means you get credit for all the good, but you also have to take the blame for all the bad. And one of the bad that I see is people are leaving the state. They're leaving the state in droves. And now you might say, oh, that's a myth. You can go to howmoneywalks.com. Howmoneywalks.com. We are over $55 billion with a B. I'll pull it up here and tell you that in wages that have left the state of California. Do you understand what that means? That means people are not paying taxes here because that job and those businesses have left. Now, in retirement, that's the best of all worlds. We want an individual who makes money but doesn't take a job, who spends money and creates multiple jobs. And when you're telling that retiree, we're going to tax you, we're going to take your money, even though you're not working and taking a job, and they have a choice, because it's not the rich people that stick around, right, with a lot of money. It's usually they're the ones that have the means to leave. And they have the most to lose, right, because they're paying the most taxes. So if you have a group that are paying taxes, a group that are here creating jobs, and they're deciding to leave, that's a very dangerous prescription, right? It means just like the state of California now has gone after every single employee, and they have taxed every business who employs somebody $150 extra. So if you have 5 employees, you pay 5 times $150. Why? Because California spent more money, continues to spend more money every year, even though we don't have it. And it affects you because they have to raise taxes. Instead of saying, look, enough is enough. Recently, there was 3,500 state jobs, 3,500 state jobs that are duplicates. That means that you can transfer those folks, reduce say, look, there's 4 of you doing a job, or only 2 of you need to do it. I get it. It's taking somebody's wages and jobs. I understand that. But there's 3,500 people doing the same job. And instead of eliminating it, the opposition said, well, those are people that could be paying union dues. Those are people that could be paying into the lobbyist pockets and the political campaigns. And so 3,500 people are still working and getting paid for doing what? The same job. So they've now taxed every employer $150. Now, if you're a CPA and you have 1 employee, or you're a small business owner and have 3 employees, you might say, what a bummer, okay. But if you're a large company and you now have a choice to relocate to Reno, Nevada, Tesla, or relocate to Henderson, Nevada, I can give you a dozen companies that have done that.
Yeah.
Or Texas, Plano, right? Toyota has left California. Toyota has left California. Do you understand that?
Wow.
Where did they go? Texas. I'm not saying I want to live in Texas, but I'm telling you, people have a choice. So I want you to be very careful when you vote this election season, because you have to realize that you can say, I want all the free stuff in the world. I get it. Rich people bad, poor people good. You can believe that. But when it comes to retirement, and your daughter works in Seattle and your son in Denver and your granddaughter has now just got a job in New Orleans, there's very little ties to California again. You can have a vacation home here, but your residence now becomes another state. And people are doing that as a part of their retirement planning because that saves 10%. Do you realize that? 10%. How many of you would take a 10% pay raise?
Yeah,
all day
I got
long?
both my hands up.
Yeah. And so if people say, look, I can take a 10% pay raise, or I could take and stay here in California as a permanent resident, forget it. And they leave. And those wages leave. So I spent a few minutes on it because I think you need to know that even though you're picking up kids and dropping off this and running these errands and working out and doing your thing, somebody has to make it clear that your financial life is being affected by these very far extremist politicians in Sacramento.
And you'll hear experts say, retirement experts, they'll talk about two of the biggest expenses you'll ever have after you stop working, and that's basically in retirement, is healthcare and taxes. Well, wait a minute, Arif. All these years we've been saving money in a place where we deferred taxes. We're going to say we need the tax breaks now because we're making so much money. We're going to finally get a break in retirement. We're going to retire, and we're going to be in a lower tax bracket. Why is taxes still the highest or one of the biggest expenses you'll have? Because it comes first. You have to keep yourself healthy and alive in order to keep your well-being, right? So you got to pay for healthcare in some form or fashion. And then you got to pay taxes on any income you have. So, look, I get it. We have to put taxes into the system at a rate in which we can keep our governments alive and healthy and strong. Got it. But don't forget about those 3,500 people that we're paying for duplicate jobs. We're going to pay them to not work anymore.
That's right. Look, this is important. And I love collecting a pension. I get it. But when you're paying somebody who worked when I started in the police department, my retirement was 20 years. That means I started at 21. If I stayed on until 41 years old, I could collect 40% of my pension. So let's say they were at $100,000, maybe a little bit more or less. That means $40,000 a year for the rest of my life, 50 years, 60 years, without showing up to work. But they still had to pay somebody to go be a policeman. Okay, so now you have another policeman out there. Now you have another, and that person, so that's 20 years. So now I'm 61. That guy is now 41, or that lady. And now you have a police officer who has to come on at 21, one who's collecting a pension at 41, one who's collecting a pension at 61. You're paying 3 different people to do one person's job. Now you can say, Arif, you don't understand the way the pension system works. It's a different bucket of money, and those dollars are sitting there, and it's not coming from the same place. Baloney.
How did it get there?
Yeah. I'm just using the city of Los Angeles as an example. Their pension is behind. That means if they say, we have to spend, $100 million this month or this year, we only have $80 million that we can spend. So they have to go to the city and say, give us $20 million to bring it up, to make up the difference. So that's the way pensions work. If there's, especially city, county, state, federal pensions, when there's a deficit, if the fund didn't earn enough money to pay all the bills and it's going backwards, they require the state or the city or the county or whatever it is to put more money in. Where does that money come from? The city doesn't produce anything. Taxes. So those taxes turn around and affect you. So when you have people, look, I'm not against these pensions. I think they just have to be managed better. I think you have to not promise something you cannot deliver, because those folks are going to leave.
And nobody wants it to change for them, not the people that are retired, currently receiving the checks, not the people that are 10 minutes from retirement, about to receive those checks, and not the people that are paying in as much or more than the people that paid in that they're collecting now, because that would change for them too. Nobody wants that to change, but when are we going to give? So I think at the end of the day, talking about it is more of an awareness thing that we're trying to bring to you, that complaining about it's not going to change anything, but what can you do to set yourself up individually in a position to where you mitigate or lower your tax bill, if you will, whether it's during your working years, or you don't buy into and subscribe to a philosophy that says you're paying the most amount of taxes when you're working and you're going to pay less in retirement. That's not always the case, and we're seeing that time and again. So setting yourself up for failure by following the herds of people doing the same thing, I'd start looking in another direction. Just look at some other tax-advantaged ways. It doesn't mean you have to leave California, although a lot of people are doing it, because they get that immediate, tax bump or that break. But there are some ways to do it. So that's what I invite you to take a look at, is some of those other methods, rather than just getting on that treadmill and I'm going to stuff money in my 401k or my 403b at work. And then where else do I go? I'm going to put money in my IRA. Great. Those are fantastic ways. I think you should save in those. There's a calendar year in which you can put those monies in, and then you don't get to do that anymore. So I think that's a great way to build up your savings and your retirement. But look for some other ways, and we talk about those ways plenty of times on this show, to look for other methods and means to fund your retirement.
And because retirement is a function of how much money you get to put in your pocket. So when you're setting aside dollars in your retirement account, your IRAs, your 401ks, the goal is to take it out someday, right?
That's right.
Now, we want you to always max out, which means put the maximum amount in, the most that you can get a matching. So here's how it works. You'll put money in and your employer will put some in. Maybe it's half of everything that you put in, up to 6% of your pay increase. Now, that's not a bad match at all. I'll take that number. A lot of us would. But you always go up to the maximum that they will match. Always. I don't care if it means you've got to get a second job, because that is free money. That's money that's going into your pocket as an extra pay raise, right, or benefit, that you do not have to pay taxes on today. Until you retire or you leave, you can roll it over. A lot of good things.
Yeah.
Jeff, one of the things that we want to see for folks when you retire, you don't spend lump sums. You spend income. So in retirement life, you're going to spend income as you move forward. You can have a pension or Social Security or a rental property, as we spoke of at the beginning of the hour, which seems to be the trend, because, more millennials are renting real estate as opposed to buying. So as that's beginning to take place, and if you're in the mindset of I'm going to buy a house for $300,000 and sell it for $3 million, but the market is saying we're not interested in buying it for $3 million, we want to rent it for 2 years, and then we're going to move on to somewhere else. If you're in sync with the new way that things are happening, then that house doesn't have to become an asset where you sell it and take the cash. It can become an income stream. This is an ongoing stream of income. But that means you have to change your plan up a little bit, doesn't it?
That's right. And remembering that when we're talking about differently taxed type of assets or income, that rental property might be one of those things. So as Arif was saying earlier, selling that house at that moment in time where you thought it was the best or where you had planned to do it, changing your plan a little bit and saying, look, I can't get as much as I thought I could, and it really doesn't make sense to do that. Now you have an income stream. And what better way? Because really think about it. What are you going to do with the money? You sell the house, you have a chunk of dollars. If you planned on living on that, you spend that money, and that money never goes back out and earns any interest. It never goes out and works for you. You just spend it down. Think of a pile of money on your mattress or in a safe at the house. You're taking that out. It's not really working for you. If you leave the money or that equity in that home and you say, look, I'm just going to turn this into a rental, now somebody else is going to work for you. You don't have to get up tomorrow morning and go to work to make sure the mortgage is paid. You'll still have to pay the mortgage, but your renters are doing that. And hopefully there's a little bit left over to where you have a little bit of a savings there. And now you've created something out of an asset that yesterday was not an asset. If you lived in that home, that was not an asset to you. In fact, yes, we can say our home is our biggest asset. You'll hear a lot of people say that. But unless you're going to do something with it or peel a piece of drywall off and go to the store and buy bread or milk, you can't do that. I'm being facetious. But really, the idea is to have things that are creating for you an income stream, and rental properties, I think, are essential part of your retirement portfolio, because really having everything go to one place, that's not a plan, but having multiple streams of income, as you've heard us say in the past, a minimum of what, Arif? What would you say you'd be comfortable with having in retirement?
I like 3 as a minimum. That's like the drop dead minimum, because then if you have, let's say you're collecting all your money. We had a lot of folks earning money from real estate when the real estate bubble dropped.
Yeah.
If that was just a portion of your retirement guaranteed income, it didn't affect your entire life as much.
There you go.
We had folks making lots of money in dividends in the stock market when the market was doing great. Wonderful. But if the market goes down, then what do you do when you're trying to live, if that's part of how you're taking money out? So the goal is to or pensions, right? Jeff, we had United Airlines.
There you go.
United Airlines pilots took a 60% pay cut. Can you imagine?
And easy math, if you're pulling in $10,000 a month and next month you're pulling in $4,000, that's what a 60% pay cut looks like.
And here's what the way they did it. You're like, they can't do that. We're a union and they promised, and great. So they say, here's the deal. Every contract they've ever written says, we're going to do this if you do that. We're going to do this if you do that. Unless we file bankruptcy. So United Airlines was on the verge of bankruptcy. TWA did file bankruptcy. Remember that, you guys?
Yeah.
Transworld gone. And they said, here's what we're going to do. We have this whole system set up, folks. And if you can't accept this pay decrease, then what we're going to do is we're going to let a judge decide. Otherwise, we're going to go to the judge and we're going to say, here's our reorganization plan. And in our reorganization plan, it includes you, the pilots, taking a 60% pay cut. And by the way, you only have about 30 to 60 days to make that decision. I know. Horrible. These are people's lives. So if you don't think it can happen, ask the city of Stockton, California, the state of Rhode Island, the country of Iceland, Mammoth Lakes, California, San Bernardino, right? I could go Detroit, Flint, Michigan. These are cities and states and countries that said it would have never happened. If you would have said in the heyday of the auto industry, even 50 years ago, that Detroit would lose jobs to Mexico or Detroit would lose jobs to Canada, you would say, never going to happen. And it's happening. So I want you to protect yourself. So how are you going to protect yourself? 3 sources of income. What would make me very comfortable? 5 sources of income. What would make me extremely happy and never have to worry about anything? 8 sources of income.
There you go.
Now, you go, gosh, Arif, that seems a lot. Well, how about, I don't know, a life insurance policy that has cash value associated with it, built properly, not some of this crazy stuff these guys are doing and selling you, but built properly, where it's giving you guaranteed cash over a period of time in your life, maybe the rest of your life. Maybe your home that used to be your home is now a rental property, and you move, and then you move again. Maybe you have 2 or 3 rental properties. That's pretty exciting. You have Social Security. Maybe you have a pension. Maybe your wife has Social Security. Maybe she has a pension. Right? So now...
And you've got some retirement accounts maybe sitting out there, IRAs, 401ks, things like that.
And you get in some of the safer money choices. We call some of the fixed indexed annuities we love, because those are safer, where you're not going to lose your principal if the market goes down. Those are options that can help you reduce the risk in retirement. So you can live wherever, travel wherever. And the biggest problem you're going to have, and I'm going to tell you it is a problem, it's what do you do today and what time you're supposed to wake up. Because we all love waking up a little late on a Saturday or a Sunday morning. We all love sleeping in, taking your time, stretching, going for the walk, taking the dog, having the coffee, reading a book. And you're going to do the same thing tomorrow. And the next day. And the next day. Jeff, you call it something, what?
It was the lifetime of Saturdays.
There you go. I love it when you say that, because part of that is reality. And if you don't have something to do, a place to go, something to feel important about, I think life just becomes pretty boring.
Yeah, you can only change the oil on the car so many times. You can only organize the garage or a closet or clear out the junk drawer. I mean, how many drawers do you really have in your house?
Totally.
I mean, you could remodel your whole house, and then that'll take you about, a year? You've only got 39 years in retirement left. So you've heard me say this before. A lot of people attach their self-worth and their identity to what they used to do as a function, whether as a profession, a career, having some things that you're lining up before you get to retirement. One of the things that I shudder at is when I hear someone say, I'm getting ready to retire next month or 3 months from now. I'm like, gosh, that's great. That doesn't make me shudder. But the next thing they say, I say, well, what are you going to do in retirement? What do you plan on doing? Well, we're going to figure it out. Oh, it's so dangerous, because that just typically means to me, that just is the telltale that you have not thought about this one bit. You've been working towards a pinnacle, a part of your life, this high point in your financial life. Boom, you retire, and then it's like they're expecting all the answers to just be laid out in front of them. Well, you have to create the answers.
You remember that gentleman that we had who was making, I think it was about $8,000 a month.
Yes. And
he said, what I'm going to be doing is I'm retiring. Great, okay. So what are your plans? He says, well, I'm only going to be earning about $4,000 a month. We said, well, how are you going to live on $4,000 a month when you were used to living yesterday on $7,000 or $8,000? Well, we're going to figure it out. I said, okay, well, how much do you have in your account? He said, I have $50,000. So how long will $50,000 last if you are somebody who is spending, going to be pulling money out each and every month just to make up the difference? So it's a very scary proposal if you're pulling out the principal of your account, because otherwise it's over. Your account goes down to zero. You're a little older and you have no more money. So we're going to come back in just a minute as we continue with this and a whole lot more when you're trying to figure out retirement, some things to do. And Arif's should I give him 5? I'll give him all 5 today. My top 5 things to do before you set that retirement date. We'll be right back. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour on AM 1220 KHTS. Hey, welcome back to the show. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. All right, look, I promised you I would give you my top 5 things to do that I've noticed in 20 years and, thousands of people I've seen in preparation for retirement, things that I think that are necessary to at least have dialed in a little bit and thought of a lot, right? Not something that you're going to say, and now I'm retired and now let's plan, like the gentleman who said, I'm just going to figure out how it goes when I get there. So, number 1, I think you need to have a hobby. I think that's very important. Jeff, we've seen that, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit ago.
Yes, that's an important part of the what's next in your life, because retirement is not a destination. It's a part of your life. It's a different phase. And like Arif was saying, we're going to have to call it something else, I think, to get people's minds wrapped around it properly so that we treat it with the respect that it deserves. It's not something where we become a different person. It just means that we have more time. And when you have more time to do something and you don't know what to do with that time, that's kind of a dangerous place. So that hobby, I think we've covered that on other shows where we've talked about things you can do in retirement that don't involve necessarily working for money when you have that choice. So I think that's a good part to look at first. And you want to do that a few years before you actually commit to the retirement date.
I see this on a regular basis, guys, because part of what happens is that boredom. Yeah. Right? So have something. If you're generally a curious person, I think you'll find something to do. But if you're somebody who's thrown your life into your work and that has not changed in 30 years and now today you're supposed to do something different, I think it's difficult. For some of you, you may have fishing as a hobby or golf or whatever it is. Those kinds of things can now be expanded and you can do it a little bit more, maybe take more fishing trips or more golf trips, things that are interesting to you. Ladies may have a similar, maybe they want to volunteer or they have a particular hobby or a sport, tennis, that they're more interested in. Now you can spend more time doing it. That's okay. But my second one is pretty important because this is something that will drag out and will drag you through the mud for a very long time. Pay off your consumer debt. Things like credit cards and loans, private personal loans, second mortgages on the house, things that are not your primary residence. And an automobile, fine. I like nicer cars. I think it's good to have a nice car. But I also think you need to understand that car payment, if you're going to do a lease or a buy, is something that has to be part of your budget. It has to be part of your life and probably for the rest of your life if you're that kind of a person. If you can pay it off and that car is now yours for 10 years, I'm okay with that. The problem that I have seen is that in retirement, the next 10 years, you transition through automobiles because of your personal needs very quickly. You can't get in and out of cars that are low to the ground because of your hip. And you can't climb up into SUVs anymore because of your knee, right? So those kinds of things start to change. And knowing that you may have to make some adjustments along the way are pretty important. All right, number 3.
Well, this is a big one because a lot of people want to travel the country. They want to go on road trips, and they say, you know what? I think we deserve it. We're going to do it. Let's take an RV around the country. And instead of just renting one for a week or a weekend or a month for that matter, they say, look at all the money we would spend renting one of these guys. I want to buy one because we're going to use it a lot, right? I mean, we're going to be retired. Right. Why not buy one? So they wait until they're retired to buy one versus buying it well beforehand when they had maybe some more disposable income while they're working. They could work a second job. They could work overtime maybe. There are a couple different ways that you want to look at this. So that payment for the RV, some of the prices on some of these RVs are as much as buying a small house.
I've seen them.
And they'll last you that long as well.
Well, and the other part that happens in this process is to realize that it's easier for you to qualify when you have that primary residence and the background, but the payment is coming from a job.
Right.
So if you say, I've been employed for 37 years with the same company or 25 years, those make it a little easier for you to qualify for that loan. And that's one of the reasons that I want you to buy your vacation home, which may be your permanent residence. If you determine where you're living, and that's the next one, determine where you're going to live. Because by determining where you're going to live, while you're still working, you could now buy that home as a second home or a vacation property, however you're going to do it. But you're doing it with the income that comes from a job, and that makes it a little easier. Very important you remember that because it might be a little easier to qualify. So not for everybody. Not everybody can do that, but it does make sure that you're in the process of figuring out in your life how do you do it where you are not going to get stuck paying for something that you don't need.
That's right. And an RV, going back to number 3 on that could be one of the things that you see sitting around, on the side of the house. I have a neighbor that uses his RV all the time. It seems like I see it for a few days and then it's gone for a week, and I'll see it for 3 weeks and then it's gone for another couple weeks. So if you're truly one of those people, you'll make good use of it. So I think funding it, like Arif said, during your working years, that can make it a lot easier for you on the qualifying and the financial side of things. But all of this is possible by you keeping checks and balances. And how do you do that? You have to know how much money is coming in versus what is going out. That retirement budget is going to be probably one of the most important pieces, although it's number 5 on our list here. I think it has to be somewhere at the top of being addressed because you lived your life in a particular way. And maybe, look, if you didn't manage your money that well this month, no problem. You were going to work all next month and you had a chance at correcting it or making it up on the other end. But in retirement, that fixed income for a lot of folks is really where it's at. And allocating your money in a certain way, whether it's making sure you have enough income for the essentials, food, shelter, clothing, and then your fun money, that's where you can see. Look, I look at a budget as what you can spend versus what you can't spend. And the better you budget your money, the more money you can spend. So just give that some attention that I think it deserves.
And your family will have a much better life being around you because they really realize that a part of this process is for you to live within a budget, and that freedom that comes with it and the grumpiness that doesn't. I think it makes a huge difference in our lives and our relationships. Because for many of you, you think that the answer, and we thought that the answer is to buy as much as you can and to spend as much as you can and to be accumulating as much stuff before you retire. Well, there's a moment in time when you can realize you can buy freedom, which means time. You can buy stuff, or you can buy experiences. And my thought and my experience has been that people that go and spend their money on experiences generally have a much healthier life in retirement because then they can realize that experiences are not just about money, but it's about time and relationships and who you spend your time with. When you're working, you're forced to have a desk next to somebody. When you're working, you're forced to have a boss or a subordinate because somebody else often makes those choices. You can always get a hold of us. Send us a question or a comment on Total Financial Solutions. You can go to hometownstation.com and click on Total Financial. Send us a question or a comment. And by the way, we now podcast, and you can find that out also at hometownstation.com. You're listening to your place for news, talk, and information. This is AM 1220 KHTS, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour.